Today, we're going to talk about the update to the food forest I've been growing in my backyard. So, I put this together, and you might recognize it. This is the phase one plan, and there are so many changes that I had to make that didn't make sense along the way, right? So, I made the plan thinking this is what would probably be needed, and it would be nice to have. But as I put it in place, and as the seasons have changed, it's just, not everything was practical. So let's just go through it really quick. I wanted to update you so you could see the things that I was thinking about and things that you might want to consider for your own food forest at home or for whatever you want to do with your garden. Let's just go through the different elements. The first one was considering water. So with water, I had a drainage issue. So water would come in from, the north, traveling this way. And this actually did happen. And then we actually had to do another one that took water right under this. Let's see if I can, oh, here we go. So it actually kind of comes out this way. But the rest of this didn't end up happening. There was a lot of digging. Kind of flooding that was happening over here took precedence. And it didn't end up that this was really practical or necessary. So, what I'm going to do instead, I have downspouts from my patio cover. And what'll happen is I'll dig kind of a rain garden inlay, so to speak. It's essentially a rain garden where everything will be graded, and I'll create a bowl that will be able to water the trees. That's my target for the rainwater runoff, is to be able to help water the trees. And then over here, eventually I'd like to be able to put in a rain tank instead of having it fill up right here. I want the water to go into a rain tank where I could use it to water as needed. But as I went through the summer monsoon season, and I actually was noticing that the trees were doing great. And as the water would soak in, all of the surrounding stuff that I had planted would just take off. The water is soaking in, the roots are finding it, and the trees are doing great. So I do have more trees than just this one, but this was the original phase one. Get pioneer trees in and try and figure out the water and wind situation. So these are still, the vitex did go in. It's a chase tree. The velvet mesquite actually was changed out. That was going to go right here, and I'll show you on phase two what happened. And the desert willow did go in here. But for the water, we spent a lot of time digging these trenches, getting this installed, which is a corrugated piping with gravel around it, wrapped up in landscape fabric, and then getting that covered so that as water came in, it would have a quick, easy path to be able to permeate out into the soil. So this was going to be a 2-inch corrugated piping. It ended up being a 3-inch. It was just easier to get, and we could store more water, allow it to have time to soak in that way. And like I said, I didn't end up putting in as much as I thought I would, especially after I saw how much work it was just trying to do this. And then these are pathways that are walking pathways already, but there isn't anything laid out to make it like an official pathway that I'm just trying to get all the trees in place and all of the kind of framework established for the yard. So this is the phase two image, and the water tank is still not there. As I was just mentioning, these pathways are still areas that we walk through, but they're not actually built out yet. We will get there. So we do have this area established. I am growing ground cover. So originally, I had put the sweet potatoes in. That helped break up the ground that's hard and compacted. And now I've got ground cover that will actually help build nitrogen into the soil so that when I plant spring crops, that will all be ready to go. And I have a couple of things growing right there in addition to the ground cover because I wanted to try out the winter crops. So I have some broccoli and some cauliflower alongside the fava beans and the peas. So let's see. There's actually a pomegranate as well that I had planted here that I'll grow it out as a spalier, kind of like when you see a grapevine, it'll look like that, and that will help conserve space and it'll add some nice aesthetic. It'll look really pretty once it's all grown out and fruiting. I wanted to originally I planned to put a bench right here, but because of the wind aspect, not I didn't have enough shrubbery, I guess you could say, or vertical plants because I didn't have enough plants growing vertically to help be windbreaks. I am gonna move the bench. It'll probably end up more over here somewhere because this tree is actually here. This is a more another decorative element. It's a big circle that I'll be putting like climbing roses around, and it actually really frames out the trees and the yellow bells, which are a native plant. And the bees just love these yellow bell flowers. So this is another decorative element. And you want to do that in your garden space, and not saying that you have to do what I did, but you want to make it an enjoyable space for you. You want to make it somewhere that you want to be. And, if decorative elements and stuff like that that help it look visually appealing, help with that, then I would plan those in ahead of time. If I hadn't planned that, I I might have planted plants where it would have interfered with me actually putting this particular piece in. And because I left that space in between my shrubs and my tree, I was able to set that in without any problem. I had to adjust like the mulch that was there, but that was about it. Now, the other thing that's gone in is there's some strawberries over here, and I've planted more sugarcane over here. This tree is not there yet, and there's a whole layer to this that like the buckwheat and the clover and the fava beans are doing their job here right now to prepare the soil for spring crops. But this is actually phase two, and I've done quite a bit of it, mostly because as the seasons go, certain things are available. And what I found was the shrubs that I need to put in to actually provide a windbreak and some privacy along this fence and here are just not available yet. They aren't really going to be coming into season where it'll be good for me to plant them until probably February, probably January, February timeframe after the last frost. Then I'll probably be able to get them into the ground and they can safely start to grow from there. And that will provide more windbreak along these two edges because at my house, as I was putting it in, I'm trying different things, seeing what works, and then trying to allow myself the ability to move things around before they get completely entirely settled in. Now, if it's a tree, that's a different story. So these, actually, those are pathways. So let's just leave that there because there is pathway room that I've been trying to leave. This, let me move this bench. This is my compost pile, and it is sitting right here at the moment because I needed to compost all the pruning trimmings that I had, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to start working this soil in this area of my yard so that I can be able to grow. If I want to be able to put more crops there and where I can grow a mass amount of something, then I need this soil to be prepared and getting in better condition. This is compacted right now, so if I can compost here and use what I already have in my garden as opposed to bringing in more compost, which I still am doing, um, then I can start reducing the inputs that I'm having to purchase and bring in. But right now, I just don't have the biomass, and that's why I always recommend putting in support plants, um, which are like just going to produce a lot of green and are able to be chopped. The other thing is it's nice to have trees and woody shrubs that are able to be pruned and produce that brown layer for you. Aside from just the fact that I don't know about you, but I get like too many cardboard boxes. Um, just from my normal shopping, I end up with cardboard, and that I've been putting into my compost pile as well. After I take off, like sometimes I get all the label off, and sometimes I just pick it up after. But this tree is actually ended up being a grapevine right here. I will put another tree in. I'm trying to create a semi-syntropic forest line going along here. And so there might be another tree right here that could be like a eucalyptus. And that would be, if you're familiar with syntropic forestry, agroforestry at all, um, that's one of the elements that will actually take a lot of pruning well, and it'll actually provide shade that's higher up. So that's actually the last element that I would need for this whole tree line. That might be coming in probably in spring. I'm not really sure. I've got to find a good source for those for ones that will survive well in this climate. Now, this tree is in, but it's not in the shape that I had originally thought. So these are elements that you would consider as you're planning this out. I did actually, let me go back to my phase one. I did actually get a desert willow, but it wasn't in the typical tree shape. It's actually kind of a tall, narrow tree that grows up, and it doesn't have the canopy like I would want from, say, a mesquite or a vitex. And even the vitex right now, because it's so young, doesn't have the canopy that I would need to be able to provide shade for the trees and stuff around it, the plants. But I did put an orange tree here. So this path has actually been kind of pushed out, which means these wildflowers didn't go there. So I put in sugar cane, and I'll plant other plants, probably some flowers and everything in here. But at the moment, because it's winter, I can't really put a whole lot where there's shade. And then I'm just allowing the weeds to pop up in these shaded areas, because if that's all that can grow there right now, that's amazing. And I'm going to take full advantage of that. So I just wanted to update you on how things are going and allow you to see the process that I'm going through, that it doesn't just happen magically. It doesn't all go according to plan, and I'm just adjusting and making, changing my mind. But I'm trying to keep in mind the initial elements that I had wanted, especially like the decorative and the structural ones, so that I can plan for those and make sure that I'm still leaving room. But what's coming up is that I'm actually looking at putting in a couple of trees that maybe I'll have them growing at an angle. I've been looking at trees that grow as a column that'll produce fruit, but they're shaped like a column going upward, and that way they don't take up as much space. They're dwarf or semi-dwarf, and so they're very small and they can provide a lot of visual appeal, but yet still provide food. Um, we want apples, and so this is a great way to bring in apples and still have like maybe a red and a green, or have that visual element so that it looks pretty, and maybe bring in different varieties so I have apples at different times of the year. So that's something to consider. I've got a grapevine growing right here, right now. I really wanted to be able to see if I could grow one, what that would look like. We actually don't eat a lot of grapes, but it still provides a lot of great shade. So it was still a good way to bring in shade that would still provide food that I could share with other people. And then above that, so that I could still get a privacy layer, I could put in some sort of trellising that I could grow um, creeping rosemary, or I could grow other flowers. There's so many different ways and different ideas that I could bring in, and I'm just kind of playing with those in my mind, and then I'll see actually how it ends up panning out, depending on what's available in the area or what I can build out. So, trying to use what I'm actually growing in my yard as resources to be able to build these elements out. That's so I think I've talked through everything. Like I said, I want to be able to put in more shrubbery, and I'll try and share some pictures as that happens. But this area has been my focus on getting the soil and everything planted. Next, I'll be moving over here and then getting that squared away. You have to build in sustainability into your design so that it can, all the regenerative factors can be just natural. And as you're activating or reactivating nature's normal like abilities and cycles and systems, that it all becomes just natural. And I'll have another video for this where I'm planning out my seeds and getting everything organized so I know when I've got to start stuff indoors and when I need to just plant it outside. All right, so stay tuned for that. And as always, happy growing.